Hello and welcome to part 2, where I am delving into some of the social media chatter concerning the cast members of The Real Housewives of Potomac Season 1. And so far in part 1, I mentioned one lady who apparently was supposed to be part of the cast but is now under the label of official friend, which means that there's footage of her in some of the episodes and she's interacting on camera but is not a cast member. And then I also talked about Katie just a little bit, touching on some of the social media chatter about her that really just revolves around her insistence on being remarried. And I'll touch upon in another video why being part of a marriage partnership, even if it isn't a thriving marriage, but why being part of a marriage partnership is so important in some socioeconomic class tiers, because from a lot of the comments, it seems that there are a lot of people out there who really don't really know why that is a point that matters in terms of establishing social capital in certain socioeconomic class tiers. But let's get into what I talked about at the end of the first video, and that was about Juan. And I had mentioned that he squandered his MBA money, apparently wasn't thinking long term for his family while he was in the MBA. Maybe he thought he was going to be in the MBA longer than what he actually was. And I think a lot of times some players who were superstars before they were drafted may come into the MBA thinking that they're automatically going to make a big splash. And I read that he's like 6'3" and 170 pounds, which is really scrawny in terms of the MBA. If you're only 170 pounds and you're a man, you really aren't that buff or bulky. So I don't know, maybe he didn't realize the physicality and athleticism that really is required at the MBA level, but that part of his life is over now anyway. What was interesting is that there was an interview Robin gave, and she said that when she found out that he was considering a position out of state, she was really kind of disheartened about it because she wasn't sure kind of how that would impact their family. But here's what is key. If you are really operating as a partnership, you don't even apply for a job in another state without talking to your partner. If you're planning on being with that partner long term, you don't even apply for a position, let alone mentioning it after you're now considering the opportunity and they've talked to you. You don't even apply. So that was really telling that she said when she found out he was considering a position, she was a bit disheartened because it's just raises some questions about why he would even initiate a search process to leave the state without thoroughly discussing with Robin what would that do in terms of his own family, because a future employer doesn't want to even interview a candidate who has not thought out the whole process about not just the position but the move itself, how it impacts their family. So I just think that's very telling that he doesn't have a plan for his family unit, or he hasn't conveyed that on camera when they were filming that particular conversation, and maybe that will come out later. What was also telling is the reaction of Robin's mother on camera when Robin says that they were just babies when they got married. First of all, when you're 26 years old and you're a college graduate, you're not a baby. If you get married when you're 18 or 19, okay, I'll give it to you. That's babies if they're 18 and 19. They were not. Once you are out of college, you've already started your professional life, you're not a baby, and you are well aware of knowing what marriage is, particularly if you came from a family where there were married people. So I think Robin was fully prepared for what marriage was going to be, even if Juan was not. And I don't think that 26 years old is considered babies in marriage. Not at all. I think that, Robin may not want to face the fact that she just married somebody who really wasn't a catch, that she may have fallen in love with him when she was younger and just really wasn't able to ever move on from the fantasy of just being able to have that fairy tale relationship where you meet in high school and get married, have children, and live happily ever after. And as I mentioned in another video, he wasn't just cheating with jump offs, but he was actually in a relationship living with a woman. And it's interesting when she mentions her marriage, how the mother doesn't make any comments about, oh, I wish you two were back together, or I wish you two would be remarried. Her mother didn't make any comments at all stating that she would like to see them reconcile. And I just thought that that was very interesting. Okay, moving on to Ashley. This is the restaurant that Ashley and her husband own, and it's not necessarily an upscale, super expensive type of restaurant, but as you can see, it is well situated, and I think that Ashley is on the show to kind of promote the restaurant and promote what they're doing, and I think maybe she's even interested in a career in entertainment, or maybe even as an actress. So who knows how that will play out as the season goes on. By the way, this is a really, really good shot of Ashley. She really can do a lot of product endorsements. If she's trying to be on the show in order to get some more exposure for that, there's definitely potential there. So we already know the scenario by watching the clips of Charisse crying on her friend's shoulder about her marriage, and there's no big surprise there. I suppose that also may be one reason why they have to keep Ashley on the show, because only Ashley and Karen are married, and it is called Real Housewives. So someone has to be a wife, and so I think maybe they're going to keep Ashley just because of that. Charisse is probably aware that her marriage is going into divorce. And here is the issue, though, that I think a lot of women need to discuss and to examine, that once children enter into the marriage, and the children then become a god a lot of times to that woman. And by a god, I mean that women are often boasting about how devoted they are as mothers, how their children are the center of their universe, how they're giving up their happiness for their children, how they're sacrificing for their children. And basically they have made their children the god in their lives. That everything rises and falls on the happiness of their children. And so I think that when that happens, a marriage is going to crumble. And I think many women may think that if they're devoted mothers, if they're keeping the home perfectly organized, and they're great managers of the household, that that means they have done a great job as a wife. And it doesn't mean that at all. You can hire people to do that, and that doesn't necessarily sustain intimacy and closeness and connectedness in a marriage. And so a lot of women are often blindsided because they feel that they've put so much of their emotion and their time and their devotion into the children, into trying to do family activities, into managing the household, and then the husband goes off and he's in another relationship with someone who has made him number one. And so that is the issue. If you're married to a man who wants to be number one in terms of your emotional investment, and then you start having children and all of that shifts, you can prepare for a divorce. I suppose that we'll have to wait and see what happens in Charisse's scenario, but it's expected that a divorce is going to happen. And the only housewife actually who even owns property in Potomac is Karen and her husband. Karen, who owns their home with her husband. And so none of the other housewives are even really owning any property, any real estate in Potomac at this point in time, and that also includes Charisse. And so you can expect that in future shows they will kind of follow her storyline as going through a divorce. And I'm not sure the viewers really feel sympathetic towards Charisse because of how they slanted the first few episodes of her just being so nasty with Giselle. So I think that when you come out of the gate being that way, the audience may not care that much. Thank you very much for watching part 2, and put some comments in the comment section. Let's get the conversation going.